Hello guys, welcome back to the Python course. Keyur Ganatra here, bringing to you another video in this series. So in the last video we discussed about classes and object and we understood that how they work in Python. So now let us take our discussion ahead, and in this video we will discuss something about constructors. So yes, right now this term constructor, you might be unfamiliar with it. So let's now just skip it. We will surely come to that later in this video because our video is on constructors, right? So first, let's get back to the last topic. Where we in the last video what we did, we created a class as you can see on the screen, and we created one object of the class, that is obj1. So now what we will do is let us create one more object. So here we have obj2, and let me create one more object, and let me call that method again using the second object. So obj2 dot account info, and let me run it again. And here we can see we have got the data two times because we have two objects and we have called the method using that object for two times. And right now we can see that for two different objects we are getting the same value. Now why it is happening? Because we have directly hard coded the value and we have initialized our variables with some fixed value. That's why it doesn't matter how many variables you create, the values are gonna remain same. That means your program will be very rigid. So here comes the purpose and concept of constructors. Constructors help us to make our program more dynamic, and constructors help us to initialize the values, and constructors are the methods that are automatically created when an object is not called or when an object is called. Okay, so constructors are then methods that are automatically created when the objects are called, and they help us for the initialization purpose. So constructors are basically initializers. So now let's see that how to create a constructor for this class. So let me get rid of all these things for now. Okay, and what I will do is let me get rid of all these things. Right now just we have this class bank. Now first let me create a constructor. So how do we create a constructor in Python? So first, since we saw that constructor is a method, so there will be def. Then for the constructor we have this syntax underscore init underscore, and then there will be self inside it. So now what is this in underscore? Is that a spelling mistake? No, that is a syntax. Now how it is done, two underscores init and underscores. So this is how this is our constructor, and in this constructor what we will be doing is we will initializing the values. So now what we can do is all the three values that we defined we can define this inside this, and we can directly initialize the values as we did in the last video. But again it will make our program rigid, right? Because we are ourselves giving the values. We don't want to do that. So what we can do is in the constructor here we can see the first parameter self, and we saw that for every method there will be one first parameter, that is self. So in this we can add more parameters to a constructor, and what that parameters will be, that parameters will be the variables or the attributes of the class that we are expecting. So our first one is user, right, for the username. Second one is account number, and third one is balance, right? So how do we initialize the values? So what we will do is we will use this following syntax: self dot, then our variable name, that is user, is equals to user. Then again we have self dot account number, account underscore number is equals to account number, and self dot balance is equals to balance. So this is how the initialization is done. So as we move ahead in the video, we will discuss that how it is working, or why we have used the syntax self.user and all these things. So for right now, just understand this is how we initialize the values in the constructor. So we are done with our constructor. So next step is to define our method. So what is our method is fetch. Okay, not fetch, it was account info. And account info, in this what we will do is we will not directly print, we will just return the values. So we will return self dot, here we have seen that we use self here, so self dot user. We will return self dot the next thing is account number, and the last thing that we want to is return self dot balance. So we are done with our class. Now let's go and create an object. So we have an object obj1 is equals to, let's create an object. So we have created an object. Now using this object, let us call the method again. So we have obj and this time account number, and if we run this will surely give us some error. Let's see what error we are getting. So here it is saying that init missing three required positional arguments, user, account number, and balance. Now what is this error? So whenever we have a constructor, and if the constructor is containing some additional parameters rather than the self, so here we have self in the constructor, right? But it is containing three additional parameters, right? That is the user, the account number, and the balance. So we need to pass those details when we create the object. Otherwise it will throw us this some weird error that we are seeing right now. So whenever we create the object, we need to pass all the parameters that are there in the constructor. So how it is done? So first one is our username, so that is John. So user first is John, then it is the account number, and last is the balance. Now let's run it again and see whether it is working fine or not. And this time it is saying int object is not callable. And why it is happening like that? Okay, let me write this inside the print statement. And okay, so let's run it again. Okay, so it is saying that int object is not callable. Now what is the error here that we can see is, okay, because we, okay, again I have made a very simple mistake, and this happens sometimes when a lot of things are happening inside your mind. Okay, we are calling the account number. What is account number? Account number is our variable account number, but we want to call what it is, that is account info. The name of our method is account info, not account number, and I was calling the method name as account number. So this, if we remove this curly braces, this will work. This will return us the account number, as we can see 1 2 3 4 5. So now let's call the method here, that is account info, and this time it will surely run. And yeah, absolutely it is working fine, and it is returning us the three values in the tuple form, that is John, 1 2 3 4 5 and 0. So this is how we use a constructor. Now how it got used? So first let's see that when we created an object and we passed some parameters, right? And then we called the method. That's why the account info method was called. And in the previous example also we saw that we just called the account number, or we just accessed the variable account number, so it just returned us the account number. The whole method was not called. So are we calling this init method? No. So as discussed, a constructor gets called automatically. So that is the first point to remember. Now this three parameters that we passed here will go here. So instead of user, this time we will have your John, 1 2 3 4 5 and 0. And then what we are doing is we are declaring a variable self.user, that is with the reference of the current object, the user, and the value will be the value that we are getting here, this value, and this value is coming from here. So the value that will be assigned to this variable will be John. Similarly, the value that will be assigned to the variable self.account number will be 1 2 3 4 5, and the value that here will be coming as 0. And then we are just directly printing. So this is how a constructor works. And let's say if you are not, and if you might be thinking, in the last video we didn't define the constructor, and at that time did the constructor got automatically called, and it didn't throw us any error because constructor was not there. So let me tell you, if we don't give our constructor, if we don't define a constructor, there is a default constructor that is called, which does not have any parameters. Okay, that is a default constructor by the Python, and it is there in every class, and it gets called automatically. And if you define your constructor, then that constructor is not called, and the constructor that we defined, that is called. So right now we defined our own constructor, and it worked absolutely fine. Now the another thing that we were discussing about, for every different object it will work differently. So let's see how. So let's me create a different object, that is bank. First one was obj1, this time we have obj2. Again we need to pass the parameters, right? So let's say this time we have Mike, let's say account number is 56789, and the balance in the account is 0. And let's print, and let's call the object, call the method, that is account info, using the second object. And as we can see that we are passing here the different values, so the values that will be returned will be different. So let's see, let's run it and see whether we are getting that thing or not. So first this one is printed because we are calling here this as well. And the output of the second, when we used object 2 and we accessed account info, we are getting this one. So here we can see that our function is not very rigid, right? Depending upon the various requirements, depending upon the user, we can put the values, and accordingly we can access. So for the different users we will have different objects, and for the different objects we will have different method behaviors and different values. So this is how a constructor works in object oriented programming, and this is how a constructor works in Python. So that's it for this one, and see you guys in the next one.